A friend of mine once said, and I quote him carefully, "If the right person told us human waste was good for you, people would line up at the sewer plant with spoons." And we laughed, because that's disgusting. Laugh all you want, but history has a terrible sense of humor. And now, it's medicine. It's called a fecal transplant. Doctors take, well, let's just say, biological leftovers from a healthy person and move it into someone who's sick. And it works. People are recovering from diseases that used to be untreatable. So, was my friend a cynic? Or a prophet with an unfortunate sense of timing and a bad taste for jokes? That's what I want to explore today. Why so many ideas we once mocked as absurd later turned out to be true, or at least mostly true. Because sometimes the world doesn't change. It just apologizes 50 years late. Almost every great discovery spends its early years wearing a clown nose. Think about it. Germ theory was called invisible demons. Lightning rods were called instruments of the devil. And doctors once laughed at the idea of washing their hands. Imagine the arrogance. Clean? I'm a professional. It's a pattern as old as science itself. We ridicule, we reject, and then, when the evidence stacks up, we quietly change the subject. Turns out, the line between genius and lunatic is sometimes drawn in disappearing ink. So, let's meet 5 scientists who were mocked, dismissed, and occasionally shouted down. Until history sent them each a Nobel Prize. Or at least a note that said, "Our bad." In the 1840s, Dr. Semmelweis noticed that women were dying in childbirth far more often when delivered by doctors than by midwives. Why? The doctors went straight from the autopsy room to the maternity ward. No hand washings required. He suggested soap and water. His colleagues called him delusional. One said, "Gentlemen's hands are clean." He was fired for being unprofessional. He died in an asylum. Years later, germ theory vindicated him. Clean hands save lives. Dirty pride kills. In 1912, Wegener proposed that the continents drift. Other geologists said he'd lost his bearings. He had evidence but no mechanism, so they mocked him. Maybe the continents floated away on ocean currents, they joked. 50 years later, plate tectonics proved him right. He was missing one detail: the superheated engine under the Earth's crust. Sometimes you don't need all the answers, just the courage to ask a better question. For decades, ulcers were blamed on stress and spicy food. And then 2 Australians found a bacteria called H. pylori living in stomachs of ulcer patients and made the educated guess that was the cause. No one believed them. So, Barry Marshall drank a flask of it to prove his point. He got some serious ulcers, and then cured himself with antibiotics. Peer review was horrified. But 20 years later, history gave him a Nobel Prize. As one doctor put it, it took guts to prove that. In the 1970s, Yudkin said sugar, not fat, was the real enemy behind heart disease. And the food industry disagreed, loudly. Low-fat everything took over the shelves, loaded with extra sugar for flavor. Yudkin's reputation melted faster than an ice cream in July. Half a century later, we're counting the grams of added sugar like auditors with trust issues. Turns out low-fat just meant high sugar with better marketing. In the 1980s, Prusiner proposed that some proteins were infectious. No DNA, no RNA, just rogue molecules that he called prions. The scientific community called him crazy. Even Linus Pauling quipped, "There are no quasicrystals and there are no prions, only quasi-scientists." And then came mad cow disease. Turns out the crazy idea was right. He won the Nobel Prize, illustrating once again that sometimes the lunatic asylum is where the invitation should have been sent. But these weren't miracle workers, just stubborn people who didn't wait for permission to be right. We still haven't learned. Now we're collecting the stuff we used to flush. We pop probiotics, analyze our gut flora, and talk about good bacteria like they're pets. We all laugh at AI too, or at least we did. Talking to machines, people said. That's for science fiction. And now, here you are, listening to a human talk about it, and the machine helping him write what it is he's talking about. Let's both pretend that's not weird, even though it kind of is. So, what are we laughing at today that'll look prophetic tomorrow? Lab-grown emotions? Recyclable politics? Maybe even time travel? Although, honestly, if anyone invents it, could you just come back and tell us? Progress doesn't always start with a vision. Sometimes it starts with an eye roll and a bar of soap. Absurdity and truth share the same DNA. One just has a better press agent. The difference between genius and a fool might be 5 years, or better marketing. Maybe the real test of intelligence isn't being right first, it's being willing to change your mind. So maybe we should be a little slower to sneer, a little faster to wash our hands, and to open our imaginations. So, here's an ounce. Don't laugh too hard at the ridiculous. The future might be in on the joke. And that's it. An ounce submitted for your consideration. If that story surprised you, check out the Eloquence Illusion, the prequel about why we fall for the beautiful nonsense. Or hit the playlist for more times history tripped, fell, and called it research. Like, share, subscribe. The modern rituals of approval, please. And do it before history repeats itself. Thanks.